Yo, what's going on? What up, family? How's it going? How's it going? Can anybody tell me who the hell God is? Who the hell is God? Do we even know? In this episode, I give an explanation that is bound to get even atheists shout and preach. Welcome back to Ace Anderson Live. Hit it! Let's go. Yo, what up, family? Good morning to all you beautiful, brilliant, abundantly blessed beings. Welcome back to yet another present moment. This is the Ace Anderson Show, where we go live every Monday morning to provide you with weekly inspirational and entrepreneurial tips, tricks to help you ace your life. Now, I want you to congratulate yourself for making it to yet another beautiful dawn with me, your dedicated guide on this journey of self-discovery and growth. If you don't know by now, I am an actor, a rapper, a filmmaker, a poet, the ace of all trades, the modern Renaissance man, Ace Anderson, and I am so happy and blessed to be here with you all for another blessed week. Now, as we embrace this first light together, I want to extend a special shout out to all you early morning risers joining in live. Your dedication to starting the day with intention and positivity is what makes the A-Team extraordinary. So, I want you to grab your favorite morning brew. Y'all know I like to drink alkaline water. And let us explore, illuminate, and inspire ourselves to be better with mindful conversation. Now, today we are answering the question, who in the world is God? Now, I'll also be explaining how, despite our many religions, we all actually worship the same God. I guess you could decide not to honor or serve this God, but if you refuse, things won't really work out for you. So I'll explain why. And as we embark on this week's adventure, I want to remind us to align our hearts with the fruit of the Spirit, and that's love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Let us trust these divine nine to guide us on the path to living a life that resonates deeply with our most authentic desires. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, I want to address the number one question: is God even possible? Well, not likely, right? No one has been able to prove it. His characteristics are supposedly omnipresent and omnipotent, all powerful, all knowing. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. Or I guess that might be somebody else. But mankind has been searching for all existence for such a God. You know, wars have been fought, billions have been slaughtered, all in the name of a God who refuses to show himself and refuses to show his face, except allegedly to a select few. Now, after all of this searching, we have found no such God with these amazing characteristics. And over time, science has proven that a God with such characteristics is highly improbable until now. Yes, we are doing it. So we are trying to dismantle atheist beliefs that there is no God. Like, what is in the world is a God anyway? Right. Well, I want to look at some of the characteristics that actually define a God. I'm gonna pull up something real quick for y'all to be able to see. Hopefully, if my stuff is working. I want to talk a little bit. I want to look at some characteristics that define a God, but before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about belief in general. Now, it's been clearly documented that the best indicator of a person's true beliefs and values is not in their words, but actually in their behavior. Now, this is a principle often highlighted in psychological studies and philosophical teachings. So, you're not an atheist just because you say you are, right? Albert Bandura's social learning theory says people's beliefs are reflected in their actions. If you want to understand what someone truly believes, watch what they do, not what they say. Bandura's theory emphasizes that behavior is a reflection of learned beliefs and values through observation and imitation. Now, Aristotle says we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence there then is not an act, but a habit, right? Aristotle suggests that our true character and beliefs are shown through our consistent actions and habits. Mahatma Gandhi says an ounce of practice is worth more than tons of preaching. Gandhi's statement underscores the importance of actions over words in demonstrating true beliefs. So again, you're not an atheist unless you act like one, right? James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, your identity emerges out of your habits. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. So I guarantee you're not taking votes to be atheists. As much as you think you are, the actions that you're subscribing to, the actions that you're taking are not making votes for atheism. And I'm going to explain why in this episode. Clear's insights suggest that our habits and our actions are the true reflections of our underlying beliefs and values. Henry David Thoreau, be not simply good, be good for something. Thoreau emphasizes that the true measure of goodness and belief is found in meaningful action, not just in professing to be good. So it doesn't matter what you say, it matters what you do. The superior man is modest in his speech, but exceeds in his actions, right? This is Confucius. Confucius highlights that true virtue and belief are demonstrated through actions rather than words. Stephen Covey, author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, says what you do has far greater impact than what you say. Covey's teachings support the idea that actions are more accurate reflection of a person's beliefs and values than words alone. So, again, you are not an atheist unless you act like one, and I'm willing to bet that you act like you believe in God, and we're about to explain why. So, let's first take a look at what a God even is by exploring the 8 common characteristics of all gods. Now, characteristic number one is that, well, the reason why I want to do this, first of all, is that, we often talk about God and what God is and do you believe in God, but oftentimes we're not really getting down to the bottom of if we actually believe in the same God and what that God actually is, what that God's intentions are, how to actually serve God. And we often get lost in this conversation of God, like just this all encompassing word, God. And I think a lot of people have a negative taste in their mouth, or a negative, they're jaded by the thought of the idea of God because they're used to this understanding of the church, right? The church is often what they're refuting, the institution. And I want to make it clear that we're talking about the same God when we talk about belief. And so I want to get down to number one, what are the characteristics of God so that we can all get on the same page and align with what God we actually all serve and who this God of the Bible is talking about. And so, number one, the first characteristic of a God: gods are all personifications of forces of nature. So that's characteristic number one. And I'll give you an example. We have in the Mesopotamian religions, you have Marduk, who represents order. The chief god of Babylon slayed Tiamat, the chaos dragon, symbolizing the triumph over order, of order over chaos, right? So these are gods that are personifications of forces of nature. Now, many people are familiar with the Greek gods, right? Zeus represents the god of the sky, and he's the top god in Greek mythology. And Poseidon, the god of the sea, is represented by natural forces. They're both represented by natural forces that ancient people revered and feared. So that's characteristic number one. Gods are personifications of forces of nature. And characteristic number two, gods are eternal. They live forever. So consider this. Forces of nature like the wind, Amun-Ra, he's the god of wind, the earth, Gaia, the sun, Apollo, or the ocean, Poseidon. These gods are considered immortal. Why? Because the wind, the earth, the sun, the ocean, they were here long before us, and they will be here long after we're gone, right? Now, characteristic number three, gods are omnipotent, or gods are omnipresent. Sorry. They can be everywhere and exist everywhere. They can be anywhere and exist everywhere. And so we have this idea that gods are always around, like they can just be, they can apparate and exist wherever we are. And so that is aligned with this God being existence. God says his name is I am in Exodus. And the eyes of the Lord, here's a verse, the eyes of the Lord are everywhere, keeping watch on the wicked and the good. This is Proverbs 15:3. The verse illustrates that the characteristic that God's presence is everywhere, watching over everything. Give me 1 second. Let me just pull up some stuff here. Okay, so that's characteristic number three. So far we have that. So far we have characteristic number. We have gods are personifications of forces of nature. Gods are immortal. They live forever. They can't die. And we have gods are omnipresent, and then next is gods are omniscient. So gods are all knowing, right? Now we're going to go through all these characteristics. If you're just joining in, we're going through these characteristics we're going to understand what a god is, and then we're going to use these characteristics to discover what the one true God is. Okay, so we're doing some hard work here, but I want you to stay with me because I want you to recognize that we all serve this God, and it's something that really it can't be refuted. Like, you can say you refute it, but unless you're not going to be like you're not interested in living a good life at all, then you serve this God. All right, so let's keep going. And feel free to comment. You know, we always welcome comments and discussion anytime. So the next characteristic is gods are omnipotent. Let me explain characteristic number 4. So we have Great is our Lord and mighty in power. His understanding has no limit. This highlights God's infinite knowledge. Now, number 5, characteristic number 5, gods are omnipotent, meaning they are all powerful. For nothing will be impossible with God. That's Luke 1:37. This verse reassures us of God's unlimited power. So these are just examples that of some of the characteristics when we're talking about what a God is. Okay. So it has to represent all of these things for it to be God. Now, characteristic number 6, gods are subject to hierarchy. Every God exists in a hierarchy. One has to be at the top. Oftentimes, God is talking about, you will serve no other gods before me. So God is acknowledging other gods, right? And when he's talking about other gods and deities, he's saying these same things, these things that represent forces of nature, right? They represent forces of nature. They're omnipotent. They're omnipresent. They're eternal, right? The gods exist. He never says that other gods don't exist. He's just saying that he is the top God, the God to be served. There is no other God better than him to serve. And so we're going to break down who that is and why, what that is, and everything. We're going to get to the bottom of it. All right. So then everything, even our choices, exist in hierarchy and must be prioritized. Now, we must be subservient to something, because if not, we could not take any action. Therefore, we exist in a hierarchy. So God exists in a hierarchy, and us as reflections of God also exist in a hierarchy. And without a hierarchy, there is no direction, which is akin to walking in the wilderness like a feeble rabbit likely to be consumed by other powerful forces. Now, characteristic number 7, gods are cosmic forces that influence human behavior. Gods are cosmic forces that influence human behavior, aka emotions, right? So gods are often, this is another force of nature, right? This is kind of a play off of number 1. So number 7 and number 1 sort of go in hand in hand, but number 7 is more about how they affect our being, right? So we see them as this powerful being, just like our emotions, right? So think about the God of rage, or the God of wrath, or the God of love, right? All of these gods are elements that influence our movement and our behavior, right? So you remember like the movie Inside Out, right? It personifies emotions like joy, sadness, anger, which are akin to ancient societies personified cosmic forces as gods, right? So we're not naive to this idea. We all know and understand this idea that you can create a personification, and then we call that the God, right? Oh my God, the God of cooking. Like, sometimes you just say stuff like that, like I'm praying to the rain god, right? We recognize that there is a being that can be influenced in some way. We innately feel that way, and we talk like that, right? So this is about how we act and not about what we say we believe. Okay. And there's this idea that the gods can be angered, and you can upset them, and so we talk about making sacrifices to these gods and honoring them and worshiping them. And worshiping them is more than just like saying, "Oh, I praise you, I praise you." It's more about how you give to and devote how you serve them, right? How you truly serve this God, right? All right. So then our 8th and final characteristic is that gods represent an ethic that governs a society. Now, this is my favorite characteristic because it really started to make sense to me when I started putting together what gods mean and like why gods are so important. You know, a lot of atheists often argue that God isn't necessary and we don't need God, and you know, it's not something that I need in my day-to-day life. But what we also fail to recognize when we speak like that is that is like there's a direct correlation between how a person speaks about God and how we and how our societies are run, right? So when a culture is infused with God in a certain way, or their God, and I'm not talking about just the Christian God, it could be any God, their God influences how they operate and move about their society, how they have created their society. And what's really interesting is that throughout history, the victorious tribes or society often adopted aspects of the defeated tribes' religion, but placed their own God as the higher deity, symbolizing the hierarchy of forces of nature dramatized in real life battle. And we have several examples of this, right? Which is really cool because these gods, remember, they're ethics that govern the society. So the society can basically be shown to be which society is better or which God is better based off of which society was able to win the battle, like truly led them to battle. And it's more than just like, you know, the God like gave them spirit. It's like, no, their society was just better equipped because they thought about certain things. They moved in a certain way. They were, you know, their people were more in sync and were fighting for something that was deeply embedded in them, right? So if their society is about the goddess of love, right, is about, you know, their society is built off of this love God, then maybe that God and that God wins in battle, that society or tribe wins the battle over, let's say, the rage God, then, you know, it's proof that their God that organized their society is better and superior than the other gods. So here we have several examples of this. So the Assyrian Empire, and the Assyrians were known for incorporating the gods of conquered peoples into their own pantheon, but always subordinated them to the chief god Asher. So this practice demonstrated the Assyrians' belief in the superiority of their own god Asher, who was seen as leading them to victory. The Babylonian conquest and Marduk, right? We talked about Marduk and Tiamat, where Marduk represented order. When the Babylonians conquered various regions, they promoted Marduk, their chief god, as superior over the gods of the conquered people. So let's say somebody worshiped a god worship the god like chaos, right? And worshiping this god of chaos, you go up against a society that's built around the god of order, right? And the god of order wins, right? Then the dramatization of the battle and the ethics are winning over each other, right? And so we're dramatizing these out through battle and through these personifications of forces of nature or personifications of ethics that govern a society. So this reinforced the idea that Marduk's order, favor, grace, granted them victory, aligning the conquered gods with the Babylonian regions and hierarchy. The Roman Empire, the Romans practiced interpretation. I don't know how to pronounce this, but interpretatio Romana, a method by which they identified gods of conquered peoples with their own gods, asserting the supremacy of Roman deities. Now, this culture assimilation reinforced the idea that the Roman gods were superior and supported Roman rule. Now, number 4, the Aztecs and Huitzilopochtli, or Huitzilopochtli, I think. Now, I could be butchering these, But the Aztecs, upon conquering other tribes, would incorporate the gods of those tribes into their pantheon, but always ensured that Huitzilopochtli, the sun and war god, remained their preeminent deity. So, so we have lots of examples of this. Now, I'm okay. So I'm getting a lot of comments from somebody who has a very generic name, so I doubt it's real, but it says more effing dumb from the only fallen angel after 70 AD, Lord of lies, Jesus, why are you all blah, 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 just cursing, just mad. Somebody's just angry, apparently. But it looks like a bot account, probably, so we're just not even going to give it any play. But thanks for commenting and boosting the engagement on YouTube over there, brother. Appreciate it. So next we have, this just keeps going. So we have more historical examples, the Egyptians, New Kingdom. So these societies, whenever they conquer another society, they incorporate other deities into theirs. That's how we have this pantheon, right? They have this, you have like pantheist religions where there's several gods. Now, it's not just like they were like, oh yeah, there's this one god and then there's this one god. Like over millions of years, right? Presumably millions of years, people are worshiping a certain god, and it's more than just like I'm just a stupid human that's worshiping a random god that doesn't actually exist. It's that this ethic that governs their behavior, right? They're distinguishing themselves from animals, right? So animals aren't self-aware. And as humans start to become more self-aware, we start to recognize that there's something outside of us that's influencing the outcomes of our lives, right? And so now we are exploring. We're exploring how these gods incorporated other, how these societies incorporated other religions into their pantheon, right? So we see the same with Greeks and Romans, right? You have like Aphrodite, the goddess of love in Greek, and then in Roman you have Venus, that the goddess of love, and so they're very similar. I think you have, is it Saturn and Poseidon, or Neptune and Poseidon, and so on and so forth, and so these gods are often the same god, but when a certain one society conquers over the other, then they either adopt the name and change it to their god's name, or they just incorporate that god into their society, but they always put the god that defeated the others on top, right? So so this just continues and continues and continues. The Incas and the Inti, the Hittite Empire. Hittites are known for their extensive conquests and would integrate the gods of conquered people, but always elevated their own storm god Teshub above them. So each of these historical references highlights how victorious societies often adopted and subordinated the gods of conquered people, reinforcing the hierarchy of their own deities as supreme. Now, this practice reflects that the dramatization of natural forces and divine ethics in real life battle. Now, if my ethic of love leads me to victory, then my God of love must be superior, right? So these are the 8 characteristics of a god, right? We have, just to refresh, we have that gods are personifications of forces of nature. Number 2, gods are eternal. They live forever. Gods are omnipresent. Gods are omniscient. Gods are omnipotent, meaning they are all powerful. Omniscient means they're all knowing. Gods are subject to a hierarchy. Gods are cosmic forces that influence human behavior, aka emotions. And gods represent an ethic that governs a society. So these are examples of these are the characteristics, the 8 characteristics of God. Now, let's use these characteristics to uncover what aspects of our current reality are poetically and beautifully represented by the God of the Bible. Now, this is the same God, remember, that we all serve regardless of your stated beliefs, because remember, what you believe is better illustrated by how you act rather than what you say you believe. Now, moving on, throughout history, we've seen how victorious tribes and societies would often adopt the deities of other conquered people and always place their god at the top. And this practice of dramatizes out the forces of nature and power dynamics played out in real life battle. And this trend doesn't just stop in ancient times, but also continues all the way to the modern era. So consider the most powerful nations in the world today. Many of them have strong religious foundations that underpin their cultural and ethical values. Right? For instance, the United States, often regarded as one of the most powerful nations on the planet, is built on Christian principles. Right? This can be seen in various aspects of American life, from our legal system to our cultural norms and public discourse. Now, we'll explore this fascinating topic later, delving into how the religious foundations of powerful nations influence their global standing and cultural impact. And we'll consider whether this pattern supports the idea that God of the Bible holds a unique position in the modern world, or if it's simply a continuation of just historical trends where the prevailing culture's God is seen as supreme. Now, I'm willing to bet that it's a little bit deeper than the latter. It's a little bit more like the former and less than the latter. So, the United States founding documents, right? We are built on Christian principles. Our founding documents, such as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, contain numerous references to God and a higher moral authority. Now, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that we are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. That is the Declaration of Independence, written in 1776. The U.S. motto, "In God We Trust," is not just a slogan, but a reflection of the nation's underlying Christian ethos. The question, does this make the God of the Bible the top God? If America is seen as one of the most powerful nations, right? Does that make and does it make America? Does it make the Christian God the top God? Now let's see, right? This raises an intriguing question. Does the prominence of the United States make the God of the Bible the top God in today's world? Is it merely a coincidence that one of the most powerful nations is also deeply rooted in Christian beliefs? Let's uncover what aspects of our current reality are poetically and beautifully represented by the God of the Bible. Again, this is the same God that we all serve, regardless of your stated beliefs. Because remember, what you believe is better illustrated by how you act rather than what you say you believe. So, who or what is God? What, based on these 8 characteristics, could God possibly represent in our known reality? And here we have it, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for, the revelation of the God we have all been serving throughout most of modern civilization. Drum roll, please. Your God is the human conscience. Yes, yes, yes. With a close and careful examination, we can see how your conscience actually fits all of these 8 godly characteristics. 1, gods are personifications of forces of nature. The human conscience can be seen as a force of nature within us, guiding our actions and decisions. God of the Bible is the personification of that force. God is eternal. Our conscience persists throughout our lifetime and continually influencing us, right? God is omnipresent. The conscience is always with us no matter where we go or what we do. God is omniscient. Our conscience has an innate understanding of right and wrong, guiding our moral decisions, so it knows everything. God is omnipotent. The power of the conscience can compel us to act in ways that align with our deepest values and beliefs. 6, God is the top of the hierarchy. So our conscience operates within a hierarchy of values and priorities, influencing our decisions based on what we hold most important. So gods also represent an ethic that governs the society. We saw that we explained that in the American ethos, right? Has a Christian ethos, and it is the ethic that governs and guides this society. So God represents an ethic. The human conscience embodies the ethical principles that guide societal behavior. We all have a conscience, so we're all one. We're all, all men are created equal. We all are equal in this light. We all have this ability and this spark of divinity within us. And number 8, God is a cosmic force influencing human behavior. Our conscience deeply influences our emotions and behaviors, much like the gods of old. So here are some practical applications in real world examples. This alignment leads us to conclude that the God we all serve, whether consciously or unconsciously, ironically, is our conscience, guiding us towards a good life, more specifically, a good future. Now, some people feel like what I did just now is not right. Right? On both sides, you have those who claim to be atheists who say that this is all just assumption and opinion, and they still don't believe that there's a God who judges me and tells me what to do. And those with Christian background will say, you're explaining God away, and God is not to be questioned. And now that's why I'd like to discuss a practical application that this idea and real world example I'd like to discuss practical applications of this idea and real world examples that illustrate the significance of questioning God, just as Jacob did before being given the name Israel. Because by understanding how our conscience fits these divine characteristics, we can see its profound impact on our daily lives and moral decisions. And we're always here trying to help, right? I'm just here trying to help you live a better life, how to ace your life. To be conscious is to be aware of one's own conscience, right? What is conscience? An inner feeling or a voice acting as a guide to the rightness and wrongness of one's behavior. The conscience can also be characterized as your future self trying to manifest itself in the present moment, right? And your identity merges out of your habits. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. That's James Clear in Atomic Habits. So this ties back to the idea that our actions reflect our true beliefs and our understanding of ourselves. So, to answer the question to folks who are saying that there's no God that judges me and this is all a hoax and it's all lies. Well, if there's no God that's judging you, like, who are you when you're judging yourself? Are you yourself, or are you someone else? Right? We're prejudiced creatures. And not only against each other, but against ourselves. We call ourselves stupid. We call ourselves fat and lazy and ugly. And most of our biggest judgments come from ourselves, and it always comes in the end, does it not? We always judge the choices that we make, and the choices that we made in the past, but it's not necessarily us, it's our conscience. And if we see our conscience as God, we can understand that God is always going to judge us in the end. So our future self will always judge us, right? Because your conscience is your future self trying to manifest itself in the present moment. That's what's happening, right? When you're led by something, it's trying to be manifest. The vision of the future is trying to come to fruition, and so you're led by this future idea, and this future idea hopefully will manifest in itself, in and of itself. So for our heart condemns us. God is greater than our heart and knows all things. This verse reminds us that even when we inevitably judge ourselves, God consciousness, the universe itself's understanding, surpasses our own self-judgment. So judgment day is coming, the big one, the final one. And are you prepared for it? Are you prepared for the big death? Right? How do you prepare? What comes before death? Before death is the test. The test is the eternal present moment, always testing your sufficiency and preparation for death. The present is the ultimate adversary, the dragon, 666, carbon, flesh, Satan, Saturn, death. The dragon of death is the snake from the Garden of Eden, evolved. We've been fighting this battle ever since. See, it all lines up. We are supposed to be able to question God and to reason with him. We have to be able to be in connection with God and wrestle with the idea. We're like that's what makes us human, the fact that we can wrestle with our own conscience, right? Jacob wrestled with God before being given the name Israel, and he's the father of the Israelites, right? In Genesis 32:28, God said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Now, this passage tells us that struggling and questioning are integral to our faith and our understanding. You have to struggle. You have to wrestle with your conscience. That's what makes us human. Okay, so to all the people that say that we're not allowed to do what I just did and align and question and reason and figure things out and put things together and use science and use philosophy and use all of these examples to come to the conclusion that we actually all serve this one God, regardless of what your stated belief is, that's what life is about. We're supposed to be able to do this, right? Regardless of what Bob Smith says. He says, God will destroy this fraud Jesus. Won't be witnessed. It's spiritual. Like when Satan was destroyed, he wasn't a real dragon, just a spirit like this fraud Jesus is. Well, I don't claim to be Jesus. I don't know if you're talking about me, but I don't claim to be Jesus. I'm just trying to help illuminate some ideas to get you on to the understanding that we all serve this one true God, consciousness. We all serve it. We all serve it, regardless of what your stated belief is. And you act, right? Your beliefs are about how you act, not about what you say you believe. So you act as though you serve this God. You serve the future every single day. That's why you got up this morning. That's why you make sacrifices. That's why you went to school. That's why you go to work, and you don't demand that they pay you right then and there. You trust that the future will provide you with all that you need. God will always provide you with everything that you need. You have faith. right? You have faith and trust. You trust in the Lord. You trust in this future. You trust in your conscience. You trust in this vision that you've been given, this spark of divinity that you have within yourself that allows you to perceive a vision of the future that you aspire toward. Okay? Now, atheists will claim that they have no need for God, but who are we truly without one? In 1882, Friedrich Nietzsche tragically announced the death of God in his book, The Joyful Wisdom. God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. After the Enlightenment, the idea of a universe governed by just physical laws and not by divine providence became the primary mode of thinking. This shift marked a significant departure from religious explanations of the world. Right? So this is in the Great Enlightenment. This is far into human civilization. So until then, gods, which are ethics that govern a society, were leading the world, were leading these societies into victory and to be formulated the way that these societies were formulated. And they continued to get better and better and better as we became more advanced and more aware of what the true top God is. Up until now, we have free societies like America, which are like the United States, which are guided by this divine principle, right? This principle that all men are created equal, and this idea of democracy, right? That we all know there is no top God other than God himself, right? There is no need for a hierarchy in the sense of in the society, right? There's no need for a not necessarily a hierarchy, because we need hierarchies, but there is no need for superiority, I should say. And just because you're a governor or you're a president, you're still a servant of the public, right? You're still a servant of the Spirit, right? Because we talk about God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. God the Father is your future self. God the Son is you now. That's why the future self, conscience, is older than you. You are to act as Jesus, right? The God of today. You're supposed to act in the superior way to yesterday. You're supposed to act better than yesterday, as though you conquered yesterday. And you're only supposed to compare yourself with yesterday, not to who anybody else is today. You're supposed to compare yourself with who you were yesterday and make yourself better every single day. So you conquer the past, and the past is the devil, right? And the Holy Spirit is the nature of well-being. And well-being can be characterized by love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And that is the only way to be. And so we have these societies that have been governed by this ethic, and then tragically, God has been killed by this idea that we don't need God, right? So this shift marked a significant departure from the religious explanations of the world. The consequences of this shift are profound. Without a transcendent guide, the rationality of the governed is insufficient, right? So despite our advances in science and technology, we have yet to outsmart the deceptions of the snake or progress beyond original sin, eternally trapping us in the present moment till death do us part. So we're constantly in this fight of trying to best ourselves, and we're not recognizing that our only mission that we are to serve is future, is the top God, the God of tomorrow, right? And the God of a year from now. We're to serve the future. We're to serve this vision of the future rather than serving ourselves today. And we see that all throughout society. When people serve conscience, when people follow their conscience and listen and reason with their conscience and talk to it, their lives are better. This is all throughout. There's so many studies about this, and we talked about this in the last episode if you're interested in learning more about that. Viktor Frankl says, ever more people today have the means to live, but no meaning to live for. Now, this is from Man's Search for Meaning. This quote highlights the existential vacuum that many feel in the absence of a higher purpose or divine guidance. So we talked about in the beginning, like, yes, you can refuse to serve this God. You could say, I don't serve any God. But if you really, in your actions, if you don't serve this God, there is a vacuum, right? You have no meaning to live. There really is no meaning because you're not serving anything. You're serving flesh, worldly pleasures of today. Like, what good are you doing for society? Nothing. If that's all you're serving, I'm just like, I just want to, jerk off and and just do nothing, right? You want to serve the 7 deadly sins. So if you do that, then you're not really living a good life, right? Your life isn't really going to go well. And I challenged you in the last episode to truly show me, please explain to me how you are an atheist if you are in any way not seeking love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. If you're not seeking those things, you don't want any of those things, and your life is going well, I would love to see somebody who is doing that. Please give me an example of somebody whose life is going well and they do not wish to experience love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And we know that those are the elements that characterize the Spirit. And the Spirit is the spark of divinity within us that each of us has that allows us to have visions of our future. We're all chasing that. We're all in hope, in service of that. We're all trying to get to heaven because that is the embodiment of heaven, right? You don't want to experience that if you go to heaven. You don't want to experience that, right? Oh, heaven doesn't exist. Well, we're not talking about whether or not you believe it exists. We're talking about what the characteristics of heaven are, right? The Spirit, what the characteristics of the Spirit are, and you want that. You want that. I refuse to believe that you're not seeking that in some way. You're not seeking those divine 9 characteristics in some way. And your life is going well. I find it hard to believe, truly. So, in the story of Cain and Abel, after receiving punishment from God for killing his own brother, Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer in the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." This is Genesis 4, verse 13 through 14. Now, Cain's story is a powerful example of how betrayal and fleeing from one's conscience leads to a life of torment and wandering. So, what's the lesson here? If you want to ensure that you remain lost in the wilderness for the rest of your life, then betray your brother and flee your consciousness, right? Flee your conscience. Don't align with your conscience. Don't serve your conscience properly and just kill your brother. And you will ensure that you will be lost and wandering for the rest of your life, looking over your shoulder, and life will not work out for you. You will thirst for death and never be quenched. That's all rubbish, Ace. The Bible wasn't written by God. It's just plagiarized. Look, if you think the Bible was plagiarized, if you're right, it means that the lessons were so important that they needed to be included in the most important book known to man. I mean, like, would you plagiarize a story that isn't good? right? Typically, if you're going to plagiarize something, you think it's better than what you could have written. So, I mean, in some sense, plagiarization is a form of flattery, right? Copying is, what to say, imitation is the highest form of flattery. Because I want to be like you. I want to do that the way you did it. Because it's such a good story. And stories are the ways that humanity teach each other, right? So especially if you believe that you're sharing stories that are responsible for bringing about the well-being of all humanity, like, I want to use the best stories, right? We tell specific stories over and over again. That's why they're so good and potent, right? Like the story of the Lion King, right? This is a great story, but this is also the same story of Hamlet, right? And these ideas, it's the same. It's just Cain and Abel, right? The two fratricidal brothers, right? This is the same story as Tiamat and Marduk, right? Order over chaos. Scar is chaos, the chaos dragon, and Mufasa is the order dragon. And then the son has to restore order. So it's a symbolization that the youth will restore order, will receive the power and the gifts from their father, the spirit of their father, right? But they're not exactly their father, because the father is too old and things are just too they get stale after a while and they lose their footing, and then it gets mauled by chaos, right? Scar. So I'm describing the Lion King here, right? But this is why these stories are so important, because we constantly are sharing stories that are important. And the Bible, which is akin to the name of biblioteca, library, right? It's the library of humanity's best stories. So of course you believe that they were plagiarized, right? And to be plagiarized for thousands of years means to have been written by many hands. So it's like the original Wikipedia, right? And we trust Wikipedia when Wikipedia be saying stuff, right? So it's written by everyone and no one, which is the description of God. That's why it's divinely writ, because it is written by everyone and no one. It's an innate story. Just like when it comes to the idea of I'm losing my thought because my cat's eating. But just like the idea that God can hold the hand and use people, right? Your conscience uses you and aligns you with writing certain stories, and it feels like you're in the flow, and you're channeling source energy, you're channeling the universe to write and create something amazing. And so this is how the Bible is divinely writ. These stories are so innate in us. They communicate a very strong principle that we are to follow. Whether or not you believe it's historical fact, that doesn't matter. What matters is your understanding of the story, the fact that you believe in the essence of the story and what it can do for your life, right? We don't need to believe that Harry Potter is a real person in order to recognize that the story is about good and evil, and your goal is to act like Harry Potter and not act like Voldemort. And in the end, if you follow the actions of Harry Potter, you're going to end up like how Harry Potter ends up in the end. And if you act as Voldemort, you're going to end up as Voldemort is in the end, right? So that's the constant battle, right? It's the constant tug of war that we're in, right? So it all lines up. That's why Lion King is so potent. That's why Romeo and Juliet, right? Star-crossed lovers. It's like all of these elements. These are stories that resonate deeply with our inner being, and so we continue to tell these stories. So, of course, over thousands of years, things are going to get copied and plagiarized, and and so on and so forth. So, the Bible is a conglomerate of humanity's best stories put into one linear narrative. These stories have been passed down through generations, not because they are merely religious texts, but because they contain profound truths about human nature and existence. Now, are you living in the past, present, or future? Right? This is a major question. If we're talking about whether or not you serve conscience or not, ask yourself, are you living in the past? Are you living in the present? Are you living in the future? If you did you choose your life? This is a question that I like to ask to test this out, right? Did you choose your life? If you're here, I believe yes, you chose your life. You're here right now, you're choosing life. If you think that your parents chose life for you, you didn't ask to be here, that's evidence that you're living in the past, right? And if you're living in the past, then your back is turned toward the future, turned to the future, right? So your back is to the future, and the future is God. And so if you've turned your back to God, you have no support against the dragon of chaos, right? You have nothing to accept you into the future, and your life will not be going well. I guarantee you that. So for too long, we have been dreaming the dream for which we are now waking up. The dream that if we just improve the socioeconomic situation of people, everything will be okay. People will become happy. The truth is that the struggle for survival has subsided. The question has emerged. The truth is that as the struggle for survival has subsided, the question has emerged. Survival for what? Again, this is Viktor Frankl saying, ever more people today have the means to live, but no meaning to live for. In the absence of a transcendent being, rationality becomes a tricky concept to mankind. Rationality implies that one is truly governed by one's own rationalizations. Is that accurate? Your failure to stick to your diet disproves such implications. To rationalize is to reason is to think is to be conscious is to be awake, and to be awake is to be aware of one's own conscience. One could argue that we know as much about conscience as we do about God. And that is why the dictionary definition defines conscience as an inner feeling or voice viewed as acting as a guide to the rightness or wrongness of one's behavior. The conscience can also be characterized, again, as the future self trying to manifest itself in the present moment. So to be conscious, one must be aware of his future self. One must be aware of a time superior to today. Humans are the only known species with such an ability, but where did it come from? When did it all start? Right. I like to be like, sometimes I like to think about how, like, I can't imagine being an ape, right? Like, how long apes must have been looking up at the stars to be like, dang, this all actually means something. And there's something other than me here, right? Because animals don't do that. Your cat doesn't do that. Your dog doesn't do that. Animals don't just like ponder existence, and pondering existence long enough, then how long does it take for pondering existence to be like, wait, there's something bigger than just where I am right now. There's something like tomorrow. Because animals don't prepare for tomorrow, right? Other creatures don't prepare for tomorrow. Most creatures, if you give them food, they're going to go eat all that food right then and there. They're not preparing for tomorrow. They're going to figure out tomorrow when tomorrow comes. Right? So humans are the only ones that have concerns of tomorrow, and we're also the only ones with God, with concerns of God. And they it's it's a direct correlation that they can be one and the same, right? So these real world examples and philosophical insights show the questioning and wrestling with God, like Jacob, is necessary part of our journey. It helps us understand our beliefs, our actions, and our purpose in life. So in this amazing episode, we delved into the profound concept of God, exploring the characteristics that define a deity and how these align with our human conscience. We've seen that the characteristics of a God: eternal, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, not the other thing I was going to say, hierarchical, ethical, and influential over human behavior, perfectly describe our conscience. So God, conscience, one and the same. Get used to it. That's the God you serve. We've journeyed from ancient mythology and biblical narratives to modern psychology and philosophical insights, showing that our conscience is indeed the manifestation of the divine within us. Our conscience is our spark of divinity. Our conscience is our awareness of the future. Our conscience is the thing that we serve every single day. Every single day. And if you're not serving this conscience, then you are leading quickly to death. Let's recap what we've learned a little bit. The human conscience is a force of nature, just as ancient people personified nature, forces of God. Our conscience is a powerful guiding force guiding our actions, like Zeus and Poseidon, or Marduk and Tiamat. Our conscience influences our decisions and shapes our destiny. The eternal nature of the conscience. Our conscience persists through our lifetime, much like the gods who are believed to live forever. From birth to death, our conscience remains with us, a constant presence in our lives. The omnipresence of the conscience. The conscience is always with us, no matter where we go or what we do. The eyes of the Lord are everywhere, keeping watch on the wicked and the good. Proverbs 15:3. Similarly, our conscience monitors all of our actions. The omniscience of the conscience. Our conscience has an innate understanding of right and wrong, guiding our moral actions, moral decisions. Great is our Lord and mighty in power. His understanding has no limit. Psalms 147:5. Likewise, our conscience seems to have an unlimited understanding of our moral compass. The omnipotence of the conscience. The power of the conscience can compel us to act in ways that align with our deepest values and beliefs. For nothing will be impossible with God. Luke 1:37. Similarly, our conscience empowers us to make difficult moral choices and unlock our limitless potential. The hierarchical nature of the conscience. Our conscience operates within a hierarchy of values and priorities, influencing our decisions based on what we hold most important. When conscience is at the top, life goes well for us. Without it, there is no distinction, there is no direction, which is akin to walking in the wilderness like a scared rabbit, likely to be consumed by powerful forces. Number 7, the ethical guidance of the conscience. The human conscience embodies the ethical principles that guide societal behavior. The laws and principles of a community are personified in the collective conscience of its people. The influence of the conscience of human behavior. Our conscience deeply influences our emotions and our behaviors, much like the gods of old. Think about the god of rage or the god of wrath or the goddess of love. Or conscience similarly guides our emotional responses and actions. So by recognizing that our conscience fits these divine characteristics, we see that arguing against the existence of this God is like arguing against gravity. It's an irrefutable reality that guides us all. The conscience can also be characterized as your future self trying to manifest itself in the present moment. So, to be conscious, one must be aware of his future self. One must be aware of a time superior to today. Humans are the only known species with such an ability. We've examined how this perspective aligns with both biblical and non-biblical references, bridging the gap between ancient wisdom and modern understanding. For if our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart and knows all things. This highlights how conscience, like God, surpasses our own self-judgment. Ever more people today have the means to live, but no meaning to live for. This Viktor Frankl. This underscores the importance of higher purpose, guided by our conscience. So, what's the takeaway from today's discussion? 1. Reflect on your conscience. Acknowledge the divine characteristics within your conscience and how it guides you in your actions and your decisions. Number 2, question and wrestle with beliefs. Like Jacob, don't be afraid to question and wrestle with your beliefs. The process leads to deeper understanding and personal growth, and you might even get a cool nickname from it. Live with purpose. Align your actions with the guidance of your conscience to lead a fulfilling and meaningful life. God will show you the way. To rationalize is to reason is to think is to be conscious is to be awake, and to be awake is to be aware of one's own conscience. One could argue that we know as much about conscience as we do about God. How are they not one in the same? Please, prove to me that conscience and God are not one and the same. Remember, we all serve the one true God of consciousness, our future self guiding us toward a good life. Embrace this reality and let it shape your journey. And just like that, we are wrapping up another fantastic session here on Ace Anderson Live. Big love and thanks to, or let me say one love and thanks to every one of you who joined in with us live this morning. Your energy and insights light up this community and push us all to level up in every single way possible. Now, don't forget, we are here every single Monday morning, bringing that heat to start your week off right. Now, if today's conversation got you fired up, inspired, or just curious to learn more, please drop a comment, share this stream, and tell a friend, because word of mouth is the best influencer. And keep Ace Boogie in your thoughts and prayers, and I promise that I will do the same. Also, remember to follow me on all social media platforms. You know that I'm out here kicking it on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat. So come follow your boy, and let's keep the A-team growing strong. Now, until next time, y'all, remember to always align yourself with truth, trust, and patience, and I promise you will ace your life. Peace out, y'all.